all it does is it transfers that onto the backs of taxpayers. Any amount of incentives we provide, it just shifts that cost. And we run into, a prisoner's dilemma, a race to the bottom. We find ourselves in situations where policymakers say, well, we got to keep doing it because the other states are doing it. If we don't do it, then we're going to miss out on these opportunities and all these jobs. So we end up cannibalizing each other as states on the backs of our taxpayers. It's been frustrating for me, and I haven't been able to come up with a good solution over the years. I've served in the legislature for 8 years on how to handle this until I saw this idea presented to me at a conference about creating a compact of states that join together, and essentially we all come together and decide we're going to put our swords down and we're going to stop doing this because we all agree that it's a bad practice. And so that's the idea. We've had a few bills run through a couple different legislatures across the country. I had a bill passed through our house in Utah last session, and I'll let others talk about their efforts on their pieces of legislation, trying to start this compact idea. I think we're getting a lot of I've got support both from Democrats and Republicans in Utah, and I think you'll find the same across the country. So that's a little bit of an intro, why I got into this and found my way to be a part of this group as really the best solution I've seen to this problem. We have a number of other legislators on here. I'm going to turn some time over to Representative Bob Morgan from Illinois to take a little time, and then he'll pass the baton on to and introduce the other legislators we have on with us.
Great. Thanks, Mark. And what a perfect example of how bipartisan this is. I'm a progressive liberal Democrat from the north suburbs of Chicago, representing the 58th district in the state of Illinois as a state representative. And it's a lot of fun for all of us, all the legislators on this call, to be part of such a bipartisan dialogue and initiative. I became very interested in this particular issue, seeing what happened on the Missouri-Kansas border, seeing two states that certainly very close to Illinois with their Midwest roots, seeing how in Kansas City, Missouri, Kansas City, Kansas, they came to the realization, as Mark alluded to, we're cannibalizing each other, wasting taxpayer dollars when that money could have been better spent elsewhere and really helping the entire region, as opposed to a particular arbitrary border line where states were spending an inordinate amount of money trying to recruit and poach businesses from one border to the other, literally seeing thousands of jobs move from every few years to the next, with millions of dollars wasted and no meaningful impact on the community or either state. And I saw that as a real opportunity for the state of Illinois. We certainly have our budget challenges and have for a long time. And to see us spending hundreds of millions of dollars on corporate tax credits with no meaningful benefit to the state, to the things in the financial needs that we have that matter most to me, schools, human services, go on. And that's money that we waste. And so myself and a few others in Illinois have put forth a number of initiatives over the last few years. In the House, we had a hearing on this matter in our Revenue Committee, trying to move this legislation forward, really as a model that other states have had before us. Mark, in Utah and a number of other states have had this legislation. And again, the Kansas-Missouri model is something we certainly can adopt. And at a time like this with COVID, there's no better time for us to have a very serious look at the ways in which sometimes we mismanage taxpayer dollars. It could be better spent so many other ways. And this is a perfect illustration of that. So I'm going to serve a little bit as an MC, bounce around to our other legislators who have been gracious with their time in pushing these issues in their own respective states. I'll start with our friend Anna Escamani, Florida House of Representatives, member of the Rep caucus there. And Anna, why don't you take it away?
Thanks so much, Bob. It's great to be here with everyone, zooming in from Orlando, Florida. Many of my colleagues have already echoed the remarks that I wanted to make, but I'll continue to amplify it. So time and time again, we see states and local governments play in this prisoner's dilemma and this race to the bottom, where we prioritize corporate giveaways over sustaining a strong quality of life that would attract the best and brightest businesses and talent to our communities. Florida is a perfect example of this. You know, we are a state that has essentially just been cut apart and bought off by the biggest corporations, many who have created minimum wage jobs that have led to huge unemployment rates, especially in Orange, Osceola County, where I am. Despite the fact that the state's unemployment rate decreased, we saw in Central Florida our unemployment rate go up. And meanwhile, the Orange County Commission here in District 47, where I serve, has decided to provide a property tax exemption to a multi-million-dollar company to move its headquarters. Meanwhile, our renters, our landlords can't get that type of exemption even if they tried. So time and time again, even when there's economic despair, we see this prisoner's dilemma take place where cities, counties, states feel pressure to participate in a game where the only person who wins is the corporation. Everyone else loses. And it's a waste of taxpayer dollars. It's deemed one of the most inefficient ways to spend taxpayer money. Meanwhile, we have so many expenses to meet, and whether it's infrastructure around public education, clean water, clean air, ensuring that we have transportation options for those that are working class. And of course, you know, even just looking at the basics of healthcare access, which in a state like Florida, we announced today that we're increasing the premiums for one of our kid care programs, which is essentially children's healthcare for the poor. And so there's no better time to talk about corporate giveaways ending than now, knowing that COVID-19 has presented a very important opportunity for governments to revisit how they spend money. And it's funny, when I talk to those that really champion these type of programs and have made a living off them, often they'll tell me, well, it's not money, you know, it's tax breaks or it's exemptions, and it's all money. I mean, whenever someone tells you in politics it's not about money, chances are it is about money. and that is money that we don't have to pay for essential services, to pay for affordable housing. You know, and I think the reality is that resources are scarce always, but especially now. And if states can join on a compact to say, you know, I'll do it if you do it, right? Let's find truce. Let's end this race to the bottom. Let's end the prisoner's dilemma, and create an environment that truly is free market. And I say that as a progressive Democrat here in Orlando, Florida. We want a free market, and we don't have one right now because the biggest corporations get to basically, you know, put their weight on the scales and craft structures of policy that benefit them. And with that said, we were proud to file the Interstate Compact, you know, in the Florida legislature this past session. We plan to file it again next year and are going to continue on this effort to build bipartisan support around any corporate giveaways and securing commitments from states across the country to really do what's right and to focus our resources on the essential services of government, not playing in the free market.
Thank you so much, Anna. Again, as you can just hear the diversity, not just geographic diversity, but political diversity we have on this initiative, to me just validates how obvious of a step this is that we should take. We're next going to go from, we went west, went to Midwest, went to southeast, now we're going to go to northeast. If we could take it away, John Kowalko. John, if you could take it over. John is a representative in the Delaware House of Representatives. And I should have said, reps, if we can probably take about 2 minutes each. John, I'll kick it off to you.
Thank you everybody for being here. Well, I want to speak from a position certainly of experience in this matter. Delaware has for years and decades actually given money away, not just tax credits, but given money away to corporations. A few things that people might say is the reason is one, Delaware is more vulnerable because of its size, its proximity to major markets such as New Jersey, New York, and Maryland. That borders Delaware, and it's corporate. But one of the excuses I'll give, it's not an excuse, but a reason, it's also a corporate dependent state, which has allowed itself to be dominated historically by corporate interests and the interests of the business community, as opposed to I think an honest evaluation of what we owe to the people of Delaware, taxpayers of Delaware. Currently, and and the whole thing is going to be resolvable eventually if we do it nationally. But if you wait for that, I think we'll have about maybe a dozen more presidents in, and that's not something within our lifetimes that I see it. And the damage is being done now, being done today. And I'll give you a quick example as far as some of this futility of this effort to sort of compete. Barclays moved 500 well-paying jobs out of Delaware just over a year ago. And now we just issued a $2.5 million grant to Barclays to bring back 300 jobs. So we lost net loss of 200 lower paying jobs, which is certainly not anywhere near the pay scale. That a year and a half ago, I testified against it, but it was granted, Amazon was granted $4.5 million. I mean, you can't get much wealthier corporation than Amazon, and they were already doing the project. The project was already started, the construction was started. These are the type of things that I think that we can only protect ourselves against if we make sure that every other state, neighboring state, and all states across the nation understand that this is a waste of taxpayer money, and it also doesn't even get down into the nitty-gritty of creating jobs or some kind of expanding a tax base. What it does do is it ends up in the corporate coffers. And we have to acknowledge that. The United States itself has become almost the United States of capitalism, the United States of Wall Street. And this is not something we can afford to just not do something about. It may not affect each of us sitting here on this call as individuals, but it certainly affects the person down the street that is wondering where the next meal is going to come from. When we start taking away the money, and there is no, and the crux of the problem of this sort of competition, I think lies in the fact that I don't think you can find 5 examples in the last 100 examples of giveaway, whether tax cuts or actual grant giveaways, where we have gotten, or any state has gotten, a return on investment equal to that. When you start calculating 1,000 jobs are going to come, they calculate the tax revenue from that, but they don't include are they low-paying jobs? Are they going to be a burden on the system of support from the state government? So I challenge anyone to stand up and say to me, "Yeah, we did this and we had a good deal out of it for our taxpayers." And I think that applies across the board. No matter how wealthy a state is, how much they can afford it, this is not good for the taxpayers, and that is where our interest lies. I know that's where everybody else on this panel's interest lies. So with that, I just want to thank my colleague Paul Baumbach and let him speak also. He introduced the House Bill 238 in Delaware.
And John and Paul, if you could just hold on for a second, because I know Josh has a timing issue with other scheduled events. Josh Elliott, so Paul will come back to you. Josh, a state representative from the great state of Connecticut. Why don't you share why you got involved with this?
Yeah, you got it. So I always think about this thought that we have this social safety net and people's concerns about welfare for the poor. When if you look at the numbers, the welfare goes in one direction predominantly. And we are just, even with the PPP and the programs that we're seeing, both with the major recession in 08, 09 and what we're seeing today, is that when we think about where that money should flow, it always flows from the top down. And I'm thinking as someone who's a small business owner, is that we own a couple food stores, and we were fine. We really didn't need the help, but that money was out there, so we took it. And we gave out some hazard pay, but at the end of the day, it's the people that are already successful that for whatever reason, both state and federal government just want to continue to bestow more and more on. And I think that over the last 3 or 4 decades, if you are questioning why we are seeing a larger and larger gap between the haves and have-nots, and we're losing the middle class, it's because a lot of what government does is continue to give money to those who already have it. And I know the pressures, especially on localities, of trying to incentivize and bring businesses in and to help businesses succeed. And there's benefit to that because there is the offshoot of jobs and growing the economy. I just don't think that we've historically done it in a really strong and sustainable way that actually lifts people up. So in an effort to tackle this welfare for the wealthy, I love the idea of combating the race to the bottom, because if local governments aren't working together and state governments don't work together, I just have a hard time knowing how much money has pervaded the federal government, that I don't think that this will happen on the federal level. I think that this has to come from us. And so that's why this effort is so exciting. And, you know, it starts somewhere, and it starts with 1, 2, or 3 state representatives. And I think that we have the ball rolling, and just knowing that it's coming through some state legislatures, it makes the job for me asking my colleagues in the state house on both sides of the aisle to join this effort. And as we get more and more people on board, more and more states on board, we can actually combat this problem that on the one hand seems too immense to solve. On the other hand, it seems very simple to solve.
Thank you so much, Josh. And then last but not least, another good state representative from the great state of Delaware, Paul Bombach.
Thank you very much. I want to mention 3 brief things. One is, the phrase I would use is, this is a wealth transfer. If you take the entire country and you look at this program, there is only one winner from this, and that's the companies. And then there's one loser, and that's the taxpayers. There's no other way to look at it. Whether a company goes to my state or your state, you know, it's going to have the same number of jobs for the entire system. But this is a transfer from the taxpayers to the companies, and it's optional. It's optional if we choose to not take this step. I like the phrase of, someone's asked, when's the best time to plant a tree? And the answer is, you know, like an oak tree. The answer is 20 years ago. But the second best answer is today. This is something that would have been best to have addressed 50 years ago, but we didn't. So we're addressing it today. And I think I want to sort of push back on an initial comment that Mark made, is, you know, it's a big system, but this can be done with just, and someone mentioned it recently, just 1 or 2 states, well, 2 or 3 states. We don't need to fix the entire country. We need to start with some states and have it a proof of concept, and then more states can say, you know what, I want to save our money too. You know, right now, all the state legislatures across the country are trying to find pennies because, you know, we're so starved and we're going to Congress asking for support. This is a way of saying this is a waste of state taxpayer dollars. And just by joining with one more state, joining this interstate compact is a way to be more responsible with our voters' dollars. And I'm just really pleased to be joining colleagues across the country from many states on this effort. We, like most states, got stalled because of the coronavirus this year, but that's just going to strengthen our resolve to hit the ground running in 2021. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Paul. We have a surprise guest. We're so happy to have Michael Romano, a state senator from West Virginia. Mike, why don't you introduce yourself, and thanks so much for joining the call.
Hi, everybody. I'm Mike Romano. I'm the West Virginia State Senator from the 12th District. In our state, we represent about 5 counties, small numbers for most of you. I have about 125,000 constituents in my district, but really excited about this initiative. It's something that I picked up a couple years ago. I think just from maybe being requested on an email, I read over it. Actually got a little bit of traction last year. The Republican majority in my state became interested in it. They started a little bit late, I think, for it to get enough legs to get on an agenda, but I certainly intend to reintroduce it this upcoming session and see if I can push it through. I think it's a great idea. As long as we're all playing by the same rules, it's a level playing field. And I think the states that join this compact and take its advantages will be ahead of the game in the end. So appreciate all of you joining it, and thank you for the few moments to introduce myself.
Thanks so much, Mike. And with that, we have an introduction from all the legislators. We have at least 2 members of the media on the call, and we can kick it to you if Pat and John. I'm not sure if we have others. If you guys want to go ahead and throw questions out, feel free if you want to specify a legislator or just open up to the whole group. We take softball questions as well, questions about our favorite food, favorite book, movie.
So I'm actually representative of John Cuoco's son, and I'm just on the call to learn more about this issue. So thank you guys all for supporting this.
Thanks, John. Pat, it sounds like a newborn. Not sure if you had any questions for us.
No, I'm actually good. Yeah, sorry, just putting the 6-month-old down for a nap.
Well, please do that and do it safely.
I thought it was one of my colleagues crying in the background.
So Pat, I know you got your hands full, and you probably
Actually,
got
no, I am actually good. I do have a question.
Okay. Yeah, please.
How much have you seen the pandemic play into, if at all, acceptance of this idea? Has there been any momentum due to the stress that state and city budgets are under?
So this is Anna Escamani from Florida. It's definitely led to more outrage, if you will. Recently we saw our county, both our city and county here in Central Florida are going through their annual budget process. So yesterday, City of Orlando had their budget workshop. About 2 weeks ago, Orange County had their budget workshop. And when I looked at Orange County's proposal, that's where I spotted the giveaway to this multi-million-dollar company to come to Lake Nona in Central Florida. And, I put it online. In addition to money we were giving away to Universal Studios, one of our theme parks here, in addition to additional dollars going to the police budget. So, I packaged in as highlighting several concerns in this budget that was cutting social services while promoting, different investments that were counterintuitive to a pandemic, but also just, everyday issues. And the public outcry around it was huge. And during that county meeting, many folks wrote to the commission, spoke at the commission meeting, mentioning the issues that that we amplified, but also demonstrating solidarity that we should not be giving away, a tax exemption on property taxes for several years in the future, especially during a pandemic. But meanwhile, we've had so many landlords, mom and pop landlords, that feel like they have to increase rent because their property taxes are going up. And yet, they don't get that same type of convenience. And they're the ones trying to, at the very least, provide affordable housing options compared to, these corporations. So there's definitely been more, I think, of an outcry, and the PPP dynamic, I think, adds to it. We saw so many companies get PPP that should never have gotten PPP and had other sources of equity. And so it has added to this narrative of, wow, corporations do own the process and corporations are crafting policy to benefit and leading many, many people to suffer as a result of it, adding to the momentum to support policy ideas like this.
Thanks, Anna. John, you had a comment on that one too.
Yeah, thank you, Anna, for mentioning that about the PPPs, because I believe there was an article 2 days ago in our local paper about as you know, the PPPs were mostly set, the amount of money available would be by the state population. And Delaware has about 1 million now, I believe it's up to 1 million LLC licenses. And a lot of the applicants that got a huge chunk of change do not have employee one in Delaware, but they are here. Their LLC is registered here. So they've gotten credit for PPP, maybe $1.5 million, 2 million for 200 employees that are actually in Utah. I think one of them was, no reflection on Utah. mind your company getting the money, but the fact is that this has been portrayed as Delaware's got 2.5 or whatever billion or 4.2, whatever the amount is, and it's not the case. It has not been a driver. But Delaware has uniquely positioned itself throughout history. My history, and prior to my getting in, I've been in 14 years now, has uniquely positioned itself. They established what they call a strategic fund. And it is dispersed through an economic development council, but now that has been even mutated into a prosperity partnership, which is a private public partnership, mostly populated by chamber of commerce types that recommend to the Economic Development Council to give away money, which is called strategic fund money. And I mean just give away money. I'm not exaggerating here. I'm not saying that, matter of fact, it would be better spent if there was tax breaks given rather than cash disbursements. But this strategic fund money is allocated every year in the bond bill. And the bond bill has so many wonderful perks in it that nobody votes against it. I mean, it has all the transportation money. You know what? This year, the day that they announced the Barclay, what I referred to, the Barclay net loss, was the same day as we were voting on the bond bill. And so I brought it up on the floor of the House, how disappointed I was, and then because of the fact there was another 15 million being added to the bond bill for the strategic fund, that I'd be forced to vote against the bond bill. I was the only one that actually voted against the bond bill, but you have to make, I appreciate one thing, and that is that I had the advantage of the public on the floor to say this, to try to attract a public outrage. This is outrageous what's going on. And you know, and we as Delaware have been clever to form this. I personally had asked the budget committee, or the Joint Finance Committee, which sets the governor's recommended budget, I had asked them to please take or hold in abeyance any contributions to the strategic fund for this year while the COVID epidemic's in place, in case we need the cash. But that fell on deaf ears. And I still was not necessarily going to vote against the bond bill till that Barclays announcement came. And that just, you know, the proverbial straw, you know, you cannot, it's important that we all recognize in our individual states who the provocateurs of this type of thing are. You know, and we identify them. You know, and I know who they are in my state, and I know who they're, who runs the show here. And it is the Chamber of Commerce. We are a corporate dependent state, but that doesn't have to be the case, and it certainly doesn't benefit the taxpayers. So, you know, I will keep up my effort, and I will try to be as generous as I can with my criticisms. And I think that's what I have to do. And I certainly really appreciate the fact that what Dan has put together, Dan Johnson has put together here as a way to, you know, solve or try to solve some of this problem. Thank you.
Thanks, John. Not sure if any other members had a thought on that. Pat, not sure if you had any other questions for us. Well, and please feel free, if you do think of any, to reach out to all of us, the ntextgiveaways.com.org has all of our contact info. And with that, I guess I would just thank very much all the legislators who took the time to join us today and have been working on this issue around the country. I do think in the next year, I think you're going to see even more progress on this. I think Mark Roberts in Utah set the stage and set the bar for all of us to exceed. And we're all going to be trying to be the first state to pass this and find a number of others. And I think we should have this have some great momentum in the coming months and years. So thank you so much, Pat, and thanks to all of my colleagues, and thanks to Dan Johnson for putting this together.
Let me stop recording there.